Hey there, this is Alexis Knight. Welcome to True Crime, the Court of Public Opinion. I am your host, guiding you through the cases that have moved through the courts and reached a conclusion, but have left the public divided. These are not your typical cut and dried cases. These are the ones where the facts may be clear. The truth? That's another story. Now imagine this. You share everything with your identical twin. Your childhood, your DNA, even your face. But what if that bond breaks? What if jealousy and resentment turn the person who looks exactly like you into your greatest enemy? And what if that hatred leads them to plot your murder? This is the chilling story of Sunny and Jeena Han, identical twins whose relationship went from inseparable to irreparably fractured. In 1996, a murder plot hatched by Jeena sent shockwaves through the quiet community of Irvine, California. Here in this episode, we're going to dive into this case and explore how family bonds can become weapons and how one twin's quest for revenge became a matter of life and death. Was this about jealousy, control, or something deeper? Stick with me as we unravel the twists and turns of a case that's as complex as the sisters themselves. Identical twins often share an unbreakable bond, but for Sunny and Jeena Han, that connection unraveled into something dark and destructive. Born in South Korea and raised in California, the Han sisters had a childhood filled with shared experiences. And to outsiders, they were indistinguishable, with matching features and mannerisms. But behind the facade of unity, cracks began to form. Sunny was the overachiever, the responsible, disciplined twin who pursued academics and success with a relentless drive. Now, Jeena, on the other hand, struggled to find her footing. Her life was marked by instability, a string of failed endeavors, and financial trouble. Jeena's resentment towards Sunny grew, fueled by feelings of inadequacy and jealousy over her sister's accomplishments. The sisters eventually became estranged. By 1996, their relationship had deteriorated to the point where they no longer spoke. But Jeena's fixation on Sunny didn't fade. In fact, it deepened, morphing into an obsession. She believed Sunny had stolen opportunities from her and blamed her sister for the state of her own life. That obsession would soon take a deadly turn, shattering the illusion of twin closeness and exposing the sinister depths of Jeena's resentment. Jeena Han's plan was as shocking as it was calculated. In November of 1996, she recruited two teenagers, aged 15 and 16, to carry out her scheme. Her goal was chillingly clear: murder Sunny and assume her identity. By doing so, she believed she could access her sister's financial resources and financially take back the life she thought Sunny had stolen. Jeena armed the teenagers with a gun and detailed instructions. And on November 6th, they broke into Sunny's apartment in Irvine, California, and tied her up, holding her at gunpoint. Jeena's intent wasn't just to kill Sunny, but to ensure that she could step seamlessly into her sister's life. She planned to assume Sunny's identity, even practicing forging her signature. But what Jeena didn't anticipate was Sunny's resilience and quick thinking. Sunny's roommate, who had escaped during the break-in, contacted the police, and within minutes, officers surrounded the apartment. The situation escalated into a tense standoff, with the police negotiating for Sunny's release. Ultimately, the teenagers surrendered, and Sunny was rescued unharmed. Jeena, however, remained defiant, denying any intent to harm her sister despite the overwhelming evidence. The revelation of Jeena's plot stunned the public. How could a twin someone sharing not only a face, but a lifetime of memories, harbor such hatred for their sibling? The evidence left no doubt about Jeana's role. The gun, the forged signatures, and the teenager's confessions all pointed to her as the mastermind. Yet Jeana continued to deny her guilt, claiming she only wanted to scare Sunny, but not kill her. For Sunny, the trauma went far beyond the immediate danger. She grappled with the emotional devastation of realizing her own sister had plotted her murder. The trial that followed brought the sisters' fractured relationship into the spotlight. Prosecutors painted Jeana as a manipulative and vengeful woman, while the defense tried to downplay her intent, arguing that Jeana was desperate and unhinged, but not capable of murder. The jury didn't buy it. In 1998, Jeena Han was convicted of multiple charges, including conspiracy to commit murder, and sentenced to 26 years to life in prison. The case left a lasting impact, not just on Sunny, but on anyone who followed it. How does a bond so close turn so deadly? Was Jeana's hatred driven by a deep-seated jealousy, or was it a product of mental instability? And more importantly, how do you reconcile the image of twins, so often seen as two halves of the same whole, with a story of betrayal and violence? All right, well, the relationship between Sunny and Jeena Han, it was a textbook example of how twin bonds can be both a blessing and a curse. As I said, they were born in South Korea. That was in 1974, and the twins emigrated to the United States with their families when they were young. Despite sharing identical DNA, their personalities were worlds apart. Sunny was described as disciplined and ambitious and level-headed, often seen as the good twin. While Jeana, on the other hand, was rebellious and impulsive and prone to trouble. Growing up, the differences between the sisters became more pronounced. Sunny excelled in school, earning scholarships and securing a bright future. Jeana struggled to keep up, dropping out of college, and then she bounced between jobs. And over time, Jeana began to feel overshadowed by her sister's success. The resentment festered, compounded by financial struggles and a sense of failure that she blamed entirely on Sunny. By the mid-1990s, the sisters had drifted apart. Their relationship strained to the breaking point. Sunny, now living in Irvine, California, was building a stable life for herself, while Jeana's world spiraled out of control. Her debts mounted, and her anger towards Sunny grew into an obsession. Jeana became convinced that her sister had stolen opportunities that should have been hers, and this belief consumed her, setting the stage for what would become a chilling and calculated murder plot. In late 1996, Jeana began crafting a plan to eliminate Sunny. She recruited two teenagers, an acquaintance and his friend, by promising them money and a share of the spoils if they helped her execute her plan. Jeana's instructions were explicit. They were to break into Sunny's apartment, restrain her, and eventually kill her. Jeana would then assume her sister's identity to access her bank accounts and credit cards, and all would be well. On November 6th, in 1996, this plan was set in motion. The teenagers entered Sunny's apartment with Jeana waiting nearby. They tied Sunny up, they held her at gunpoint, and they searched for valuables. Now, meanwhile, Jeana lingered outside, ready to step in once her sister was incapacitated. What Jeana didn't account for, though, was Sunny's resilience and quick thinking. As the chaos unfolded, Sunny's roommate managed to escape and call 911. And the police responded quickly, surrounding the apartment and initiating a standoff. The teenagers, realizing they were out of options, surrendered, and Sunny was rescued unharmed. Jeana was arrested shortly afterward, maintaining her innocence, despite the evidence against her. The gun, the teenager's testimonies, and Jeana's own plans to forge Sunny's signature painted a damning picture of her intent. The case against Jeena Han moved swiftly. Prosecutors presented a strong argument, backed by the teenager's detailed confessions and physical evidence from the crime scene. The narrative was clear. Jeena was the mastermind, driven by jealousy and desperation, and willing to sacrifice her own sister in order to solve her financial problems. Gina's defense attempted to shift the narrative, arguing that the plan was never meant to result in murder. They claimed Jeena only wanted to scare Sunny into submission and then gain access to her finances. However, the evidence contradicted this claim. The teenagers testified that Jeena had explicitly discussed killing Sunny and had provided them with a gun so they could carry out the act. Throughout the trial, Jeena remained defiant, though, denying any intention to harm her sister. Her lack of remorse and refusal to take responsibility only strengthened the prosecution's case. In 1998, the jury found her guilty on multiple charges, including conspiracy to commit murder. Jeena was sentenced to 26 years to life in prison, marking the end of one of the most sensational sibling rivalries in recent history. The verdict in Jeena Han's trial didn't just bring closure to a chilling case. It ignited a wave of public fascination and debate. The image of identical twins, one plotting to kill the other, was almost too surreal to believe. News outlets latched onto the sensational details, dubbing Jeena the evil twin in headlines that painted her as a villain straight out of fiction. But for Sunny, the aftermath was far from sensationalized. She had narrowly escaped death at the hands of her own sister, and now faced the emotional toll of that betrayal. In interviews, Sunny described her heartbreak and disbelief, struggling to reconcile the sister she grew up with and the woman who tried to destroy her life. "I loved her," is what Sunny said in one emotional statement. And she also said, "I still don't understand how she could hate me this much." The public reaction to the case was deeply divided. While many saw Jeena as a cold, calculating criminal, others speculated about deeper psychological issues that might have driven her actions. Was this a simple case of greed and jealousy, or did it stem from untreated mental health struggles exacerbated by the twins' lifelong competition? Experts weighed in, pointing to the unique pressures of identical twin dynamics, where individuality is often overshadowed by constant comparison. Gina's lack of remorse became a focal point of the trial and its coverage. Prosecutors emphasized her cold demeanor and refusal to take responsibility, painting her as someone entirely devoid of empathy. This, combined with the overwhelming evidence against her, left little doubt in the jury's mind. Yet the relatively light sentence of 26 years to life sparked controversy, with many arguing it did not adequately reflect the severity of her crimes. The fallout wasn't limited to the courtroom. The Han family's private struggles became public knowledge, with reports of long-standing tension and financial disputes adding another layer to the story. Friends and acquaintances came forward with their accounts of the twins' relationship, describing it as both intensely close and dangerously competitive. These details only fueled the public's fascination, making the Han twins a case study in how sibling bonds can turn deadly. The prosecution's case against Jeena Han was built on a foundation of overwhelming evidence. They presented the jury with a clear narrative. Jeena was the mastermind behind a meticulously planned scheme to murder her twin sister Sunny out of jealousy and desperation. Prosecution pointed to the testimonies of the two teenagers she had recruited, both of whom described in detail how Jeena instructed them to break into Sunny's apartment, restrain her, and ultimately kill her. Prosecutors also highlighted Jeana's preparation and intent. She provided the teenagers with a gun and specific instructions on how to carry out the attack. Additionally, they presented evidence of her attempts to forge Sunny's signature and impersonate her to gain access to financial accounts. These actions, they argued, demonstrated premeditation and a willingness to go to any lengths to achieve her goals. The prosecution leaned heavily on Jeana's lack of remorse, portraying her as a manipulative and devoid of empathy. Her cold demeanor in court and her repeated denials of guilt only strengthened their argument. This was not a spur-of-the-moment act, one prosecutor told the jury, saying it was calculated and it was a deliberate plan to eliminate her sister and then take over her life. For the jury, the evidence was compelling. The combination of physical evidence, witness testimony, and Jeana's own actions painted a damning picture of her role in the plot. The prosecution urged the jury to consider not just the crime itself, but the betrayal at its core. A twin sister plotting to murder her own flesh and blood. Now, the defense, they faced an uphill battle from the beginning, given the mountain of evidence against Jeana. Their strategy focused on casting doubt on her intent and reframing the narrative as one of desperation rather than malice. Jeana's lawyers argued that she never intended to harm Sunny and that the plan was meant to scare her into relinquishing control of shared financial assets. The defense pointed to Jeana's chaotic life and her financial troubles as evidence of her instability, and they argued that she was overwhelmed and unhinged. She was acting out of desperation rather than calculated evil. And they also questioned the reliability of the teenagers' testimonies, suggesting they had been coerced into implicating Jeana in exchange for lighter sentences. Mental health became a key element of the defense's argument. Expert witnesses testified about the psychological toll of a constant comparison in identical twin relationships, suggesting that Jeana's actions were rooted in feelings of inadequacy and unresolved trauma. While this didn't absolve her of responsibility, the defense hoped it would evoke some sympathy from the jury and lead to a lighter sentence. However, the defense struggled to counter the evidence of premeditation. The gun, the forged signatures, and Jeana's detailed planning all pointed to a level of intent that was hard to dismiss. Despite their efforts, the defense couldn't overcome the perception that Jeana had gone far beyond desperation and into the realm of deliberate, calculated action. For the jury, the case presented a unique challenge. The evidence against Jeana was overwhelming, but the psychological nuances of the twins' relationship added layers of complexity. Was this a case of pure malice? Or did deeper psychological issues play a role here? Could Jeana's actions be attributed to her feelings of inferiority and years of unresolved resentment? Or were those simply excuses for her criminal behavior? Well, the jury ultimately decided that the evidence of premeditation outweighed any mitigating factors, and Jeana was found guilty on multiple charges, including conspiracy to commit murder. Yet her sentence, 26 years to life, reflected the complexity of the case. Some jurors reportedly struggled with the idea of condemning a twin for plotting against her sister, while others believed the sentence was too lenient given the gravity of the crime. The jury's decision didn't settle the public debate. If anything, it intensified it. Was justice truly served, or did the case reveal the limits of a legal system in addressing crimes rooted in psychological and familial dynamics? These questions would linger long after the trial ended. The media frenzy surrounding the Han twins' murder plot turned Jeena Han into an infamous figure, often referred to as the evil twin. Headlines and news segments leaned heavily on this sensational label, framing the case as a stark contrast between good and evil. Sunny as the innocent victim and Jeena as the cold, calculating villain. While this narrative captured public attention, it also simplified a story filled with psychological complexity. Critics argued that the media's portrayal reduced the case to entertainment, overshadowing the deeper questions it raised. Was Jeena truly evil? Or was her obsession with Sunny a symptom of untreated mental health issues exacerbated by the unique pressures of being an identical twin? This framing also ignored the broader implications of how societal expectations and familial dynamics can shape destructive behaviors. For Sunny, the evil twin narrative was both validating and painful. It underscored her role as the victim, but also made her life a public spectacle. In interviews, Sunny expressed frustration with the sensationalism, emphasizing the emotional toll of being betrayed by her sister. "This wasn't just a crime, it was a tragedy for both of us," she said. And her words served as a sobering reminder that the story was more than a headline. This was a real-life nightmare. The sentence handed down to Jeena, 26 to life. This became a focal point of the public debate because many felt it was too lenient given the premeditated nature of this crime and the psychological trauma that it inflicted on Sunny, her sister. Comparisons to other high-profile cases involving attempted murder fueled these sentiments, with critics arguing that Jeena's sentence did not reflect the gravity of her actions. But on the other hand, some legal experts defended the sentence, and they pointed to the unique challenges posed by the case. Jeena's mental state, her lack of a prior criminal record, and the fact that Sunny survived unscathed were all factors that likely influenced the decision. Nobody did actually die here. For these commentators, the sentence reflected a balance between punishment and the acknowledgement of the case's psychological nuances. This divide mirrored broader societal tensions about how the justice system handles crimes rooted in family dynamics and mental health. Was Jeena's sentence a failure of accountability? Was it a compassionate acknowledgement of her circumstances? The debate highlighted the limitations of a system designed to address black and white cases when faced with a story as complex as the Han twins. Despite, or perhaps because of, the controversy, the Han twins' story became a cultural touchstone. Documentaries came out, they had the true crime shows and podcasts that explored all the details, fueling public fascination with the case. People were just drawn to this case. They were drawn to the psychological intrigue of identical twins, the betrayal at the heart of this crime, and the unresolved questions about Jeena's motives. However, this fascination came with its own set of criticisms. Some argued that the media's focus on the twins' physical resemblance and dramatic storyline overshadowed the real consequences of Jeena's actions. The victims' voices, particularly Sunny's, were often drowned out by the spectacle. For Sunny, the public's obsession with her sister was a painful reminder of the betrayal she had endured, turning her trauma into a form of entertainment for others. The case also sparked broader discussions about the pressures faced by twins and how those pressures can lead to unhealthy dynamics. Twin experts pointed out that identical siblings often struggle with identity issues, feelings of competition, and societal expectations to be inseparable. Society loves twins, and they love learning about them and watching them, finding if they can find their differences. Just by being twins, they are a form of entertainment, it seems. The Han twins' story brought these issues into sharp focus, and it challenged the idealized image of twin relationships. The Han twins murder plot. It leaves us with more questions than answers, doesn't it? What drives someone to such extremes and to feel like those extremes are the ultimate option, especially against a sibling they've shared their entire life with? Was Jeena Han's obsession rooted in jealousy, desperation, or was there something deeper going on? An identity crisis born from years of comparisons and competition? Well, that's what some say. And how do we reconcile the bond between twins, often seen as unbreakable, with the reality of a betrayal like this? For Sunny, the betrayal was personal, and it was emotional and irrevocable. Yet for Jeena, the motivations remain murky. Her denial of intent and refusal to express remorse only deepen the mystery. Was she driven by calculated malice, or did she act out of a distorted sense of survival and identity? The justice system made its ruling, but the court of public opinion remains divided. Did Jeena's sentence fit the crime, or did the complexities of her relationship with Sunny warrant greater leniency or harsher punishment? And what does this case reveal about the pressures of twin dynamics, where individuality often becomes a battle for existence? As we close this chapter, I leave you with one final thought. Can justice ever truly address the layers of human emotion, family ties, and psychological complexity that cases like this bring to light? Or does it simply serve as a mirror, reflecting our own struggles to understand the human condition? Think about it. And thank you for joining me in True Crime, the Court of Public Opinion. Stay safe out there. Stay curious and ask the difficult questions. And until next time, this is Alexis Knight.